Customer service people of Reddit. What's the dumbest thing a customer has gone out of their way to complain about? Story 1. I worked at a bank a few years ago as a call taker. One day, a customer called in and had entered the wrong identification number that the bank uses to retrieve a person's information. That wasn't unusual. I dealt with that kind of thing a dozen times a day. I asked the woman if she could please provide her name or identification number. She immediately snapped and said, "You should have all my friggin' information in front of you." I replied politely, "Ma'am, there seems to have been an error, so if I could get some information, I'd be happy to get you through this as quickly as I can." She then shouted an 8-digit number at me. I repeated it back to confirm and tried to pull up her profile, but there was no information attached, so I confirmed the number with her again. "Yep, that's the number. What are you, daft or something?" she snapped. "Ma'am, I am just trying to bring up the profile so I can assist with any issue you're having," I said calmly. "I will try with your name instead. Could you please provide your first and last name?" Let's just say her name was Elena Smith. I don't recall her actual first name, and her real last name was uncommon. I searched it, but nothing came up. Naturally, I asked, "Is Smith your maiden name, Elena?" "I have never been married in my life," she replied coldly. "All right," I continued. "You mentioned earlier that you were having an issue with your card not working. Can I get the card number? We'll try to bring up your profile that way." She paused. "Why do you want my card number? Are you trying to scam me?" "Ma'am, you called the bank. If your profile had come up, I'd already have access to that information. There are strict security measures in place to ensure your card details remain safe. Even with the card number, no one in this bank could misuse it. I always said that to reassure people who were uneasy about sharing sensitive information." She eventually said, "Fine," and gave me the number. I confirmed it with her as I typed it in, but once again, nothing came up. Then, I asked what might have sounded like a stupid question. "Ma'am, what color is the card?" I asked. "Blue and pink," she replied. "Okay, and the symbol in the top left-hand corner, is it a purple shield?" "Yes, of course. That's your company's symbol, you idiot." "No, ma'am. I am sorry, but you've called the wrong bank. If you call this number, I provided her with the correct bank's number just to be helpful. They should be able to assist you." "No, this is the bank. This is my bank," she shouted. "I am sorry, Elisa, but the bank card you just described doesn't match anything we issue. We've never offered a blue and pink card, and our symbol is not a purple shield." I kept my tone polite, just trying to help her get where she needed to go. At that point, my manager started listening in, curious about why I was giving out another bank's number. That's when she really lost it. "First of all, don't be facetious. Second of all, my name is Elena. You're such an idiot. Do you even know what facetious means?" I replied calmly, essentially sarcastic. "Now, Elisa, this time deliberately, on the back of the card, there will be a number to call." "It's Elena, you little crap. And yes," she was furious. Luckily, I already had manager approval to drop her into the chaos that is the other bank's queue. "Well, Elisa, if you call that number, you'll reach the correct people," I said. "My name should be right in front of you. Stop getting it wrong. I would like to speak with your manager." Normally, the bank's policy was that if someone asked for a manager, we had to escalate, notify a manager, and in the meantime, try to calm the caller down. My manager muted my mic and said the best thing I could have heard all day. "She's not a customer. She doesn't have any valid claim to speak to a manager, and frankly, I don't want to speak to her. You have plenty of grounds to hang up. She's being abusive. So I say, have some fun with it, and hang up." "So," I said, "I am so sorry, Elisa, that I keep getting it wrong. But the fact that your information isn't on my screen means you got something wrong. Now, since I can't identify you, I am not allowed to transfer you to a manager." Total lie, of course. "Now, Elisa, if you call the correct bank, maybe they can assist you with this issue. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Catherine? I mean Karen. Oops. Sorry, Elisa." She hung up. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I am a server at a small, locally owned restaurant. One shift, I took a quick trip to the bathroom during a rare moment when none of my tables needed anything. As soon as I walked in, before I could even open a stall door, a middle-aged woman standing at the sinks turned to me and said, gesturing irritably at the soap dispensers, which are all motion-activated, "All of your dispensers are empty. None of them works." Immediately, I was annoyed. I couldn't even get 2 minutes out of my shift to pee. And instead of politely asking for help, something like, "Excuse me, I think your soap dispensers are empty. Could you help me?" she just launched straight into a complaint. I said something like, "Oh, are they? Let me check." I walked past her and waved my hand under one of the dispensers. Sure enough, out came the soap, no problem. I turned to her, handful of soap, about to speak, but she jumped in again. "Well, when I tried all of them, none of them worked for me. The dispensers aren't sensitive enough." She then proceeded to show me how she'd been trying to get soap. Instead of placing her hand under the obvious nozzle at the front of the dispenser, clearly labeled by the way, she was awkwardly waving her hand underneath the bottom. At this point, I just thought, whatever, she can wash her hands now. I turned to wipe the soap off my own hand so I could finally use the bathroom, only for her to start complaining again, now about something else entirely out of my control. "The faucets don't work either. I've been standing here trying to get the water to come out for at least 5 minutes. I turned back to the sinks, which, like the soap dispensers, are also motion-activated, and waved my hand underneath one. Surprise, water immediately started flowing. "You have to put your hand directly under it," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It's motion-activated, like the soap dispensers." "You should change it. It's very inefficient," she snapped. She then continued standing there fuming and going on about how everything was terrible, instead of, actually washing her hands, now that I had literally walked her through how every part of our bathroom worked. At this point, all I wanted to do was pee and get back to my tables. Who knows, maybe one of them needed something, and I was stuck in the bathroom showing a grown buns woman how to wash her hands. Her endless complaining could actually cost me tips. Rather than continue standing there or try to explain that I have zero control over the sensitivity of the sinks or soap dispensers, I just smiled and said, "Thanks for bringing it to my attention. I will let my manager know." She didn't like that response either, but I made it pretty clear the conversation was over. I turned and walked into a stall, even as she kept grumbling about how I needed to inform a manager right away. The kicker? Apparently, my manager was looking for me while all of this was happening. Later that evening, just as I was clocking out, she pulled me aside to scold me for taking too long in the bathroom. I had to explain that I spent that time walking a customer through how to use our soap dispensers and sinks. Thankfully, my manager believed me and just rolled her eyes at how ridiculous some customer complaints can be. But seriously, what did that woman think she was going to accomplish by being so rude to me? I don't control the bathroom fixtures. If it bothered her that much, she should have asked for the manager herself instead of wasting my time. And the thing is, she wasn't even one of my tables. I had no actual obligation to help her. I could have just said, "Yes, they work," and gone on with my day. The fact that I went out of my way to help her and still ended up getting in trouble for it is honestly infuriating. Story 3. I worked for an urgent care clinic in California, which is relevant because Californians often have a false sense of entitlement. When the H1N1 outbreak hit and the vaccine finally became available, chaos ensued. Our clueless boss announced its availability over the radio without informing the staff. I arrived for work 1 to 2 hours early, before the clinic even opened, and couldn't find a place to park. I had to push through a crowd just to get inside, with people trying to follow me in. The clinic was small, with 5 patient rooms and only 1 doctor scheduled per day. There were at least 50 people outside, already in a panic, and the crowd was growing by the minute. One woman, very much a Karen, demanded to be let in for her shot before we opened. I had no idea what she was talking about and told her this was the employee entrance and she needed to wait. She insisted I remember her so that when we did open, she could be first in line, as if we had some kind of agreement. I told her it was first come, first served, and shut the door. It was a one-way mirror, and the look on her face was the highlight of my day, or at least the 1 to 2 hours before I had to open the doors. The boss usually didn't show up until about 45 minutes after we opened, but that morning I had to call her to ask what the heck was going on, where the paperwork for the immunizations was, what we were supposed to be doing, all of it. Naturally, she didn't answer. At the time, the only guidance we'd gotten through the medical community was that the vaccine was intended for people with compromised immune systems. When I unlocked the door, it was like Black Friday for starving Dalmatians. People surged in, practically throwing themselves at me. I made it back to my desk, and then the boss finally called. We were to screen everyone for qualifying conditions. So I started asking questions, and surprise, everyone was suddenly dying of something. I'd pull up their charts, and they wouldn't say anything about the AIDS, cancer, or whatever else they were suddenly claiming. Total circus. Then came Karen. Picture a 40-something Lorraine from Mad TV blended with Honeychest's mom. Real classy. I asked her what condition she had that compromised her immune system. She said, acid reflux. I asked again, just to be sure, what condition do you have that compromises your immune system? Again, acid reflux. She was the healthiest heifer in the building. I asked if she had any other diagnoses, and she said no. So I told her, ma'am, acid reflux does not compromise your immune system. You will not be receiving a vaccine. She got hysterical, saying she knew the owner and that she'd have my job in no time. I told her she could wait and talk to the boss when she got a minute. Karen asked when I thought that would be. I said I didn't know, because the boss wasn't even here yet. Yeah, the boss, who was also the owner and the doctor, would show up whenever she'd recovered enough from her hangover to drive. So we literally had an urgent care clinic open for emergencies, and she just rolled in whenever. Karen kept ranting, and I ignored her to work with the slightly more reasonable patients. She went on about how Dr. Worthless was going to fire me, how she was going to sue me, and so on. Then Dr. Worthless showed up, and Karen immediately jumped down her throat, trying to convince her that I was the devil and that I had been bad-mouthing her for being late. I'd had enough. I pulled up 10 charts, enough to keep the medical assistants busy for a while, and went to talk with Dr. Worthless and Vanilla. Before I could even say a word, Dr. Worthless cut me off and said Karen was getting a shot. We only had about 30 vaccines. I ended up turning away around 75 people, actual sick patients, but Vanilla got her friggin' shot. Later, I asked Dr. Worthless who Vanilla was and why she was so important. Turns out, Dr. Worthless was notorious for throwing employees under the bus to please her friends. Vanilla had threatened her with a Yelp review. She wasn't even a patient and didn't live in our county. She was just a friggin' tourist. Story 4. Throughout school, I worked at a university competition pool, mostly lane swimming with fewer kids on floating toys, though there was a bit of that on weekends. We had one regular, let's call him Bill, who often made requests or complaints, but always in such an over-the-top way that it was impossible to take him seriously. The pool was freshwater, chemically treated. Bill claimed the chemicals were too harsh for his skin and demanded we switch to a saltwater pool within 2 weeks. Not thinking he was serious, since that kind of change would be monstrous and probably require building a new pool, we didn't report his request to management. 2 weeks later, Bill shows up, marches into the pool, and demands, "Why is this fresh water? This should be salt." It didn't matter that even if we had millions to replace pipes, filtration, and tiles, it simply wouldn't happen in 2 weeks. He completely lost it, stormed out, complained to the front desk, and warned me to start looking for a new job because management knew about my blunder in not reporting the initial complaint. Management later told me they laughed at him when he left, but that was just the beginning of a downhill relationship. The pool usually played an easy-listening radio station sponsored by a local company. Some guards and staff would put on other music on weekends, but it was never loud or obnoxious and always kept at a reasonable volume. Still, there was always someone complaining. "The music is too loud. Turn off the noise solution." Sure, we'd turn it down. No, it had to be off completely. Eventually, Bill started watching for the office to be empty so he could sneak in and turn it off himself. He even wrote a lengthy complaint comparing the sound of the local easy listening FM to World War II POW torture. I will never forget when he called the Beatles a heavy metal popular rock band. Once, he showed up during synchronized swimming practice. They had their boombox and underwater speaker going. Bill screamed at the children, their instructor, the guards, the front desk, and sent multiple long-winded complaints to every level of management, even the university dean. He talked to me at length, claiming those speakers should be considered illegal weapons and that synchronized swimming sound systems were nothing short of war crimes. He even drafted a lawsuit, alleging the pool psychologically damaged him. The lawsuit didn't amount to much. From what I understand, he didn't hire a lawyer and just filed it himself, so it was thrown out before reaching a judge. After that, management took him aside and said, "If you're nice, we'll help you, but you can scream at patrons, especially kids." They warned that his membership would be revoked if he didn't shape up. But soon enough, he was back at it. I won't get into all the bizarre things he did, but the highlights include pushing kids around, yelling at the varsity swim team for swimming in his lane, and even faking a seizure in the water. Lifelong patrons hated him, management hated him, and frontline staff hated him. He was a miserable man, but really, he was the one who couldn't handle it anymore. Before his membership was finally revoked, he quit and moved to a different pool, citing our poor customer service. Story 5. I am not a customer service person, but I worked at a little hole-in-the-wall, family-owned drive-in fast food place. This spot was well known locally. Everyone in the small town knew it. The town itself had a reputation for being full of rough, tough farmers, hunters, welders, smiths, and miners. No joke. These folks did a lot of hard artisan work and were naturally sarcastic. Friendly at first, but if you pushed the wrong buttons, you'd be in a world of hurt. Nothing fazed them. The place also got a lot of travelers heading to resorts a few miles away. This lily-pad town was smacked in the middle of nowhere between other small towns and villages. I frequented the family business regularly. They sourced all their produce locally, so the food was good quality. That also meant the prices were a bit higher. Think Culver's, but with better quality, if you've ever paid their unfortunate prices. A traveling lady made a huge mistake. Her nice brand-new Lincoln Navigator was parked in the small lot, still running. I parked my less fancy Malibu right next to her. As soon as I stepped out of my car, I could hear her yelling through the cheap storm door that barely latched in the summer heat. It was noon. The kids were just coming back from the creek, and the faint aroma of fish and chips with fried pickles hung in the air like a Midwestern perfume. This was banshee screaming would occasionally pause as the employee, a tough, no-nonsense daughter of the business owner and her husband, responded. These women were Scandinavian as hell. If you know what that means, good for you. If not, it means they were not to be messed with. The excitement had just started. Keep in mind, they had cute little paper menus with prices on them. Karen couldn't do math either. She was freaking out that her food came to the whopping price of $10.65. She hadn't even paid yet, of course. Lyra, our employee, dead inside since the day she crawled from her mother's unholy womb, was staring this woman down. "The prices," she said, her teeth practically grinding, "are the prices. Now pay up, or I am eating your food for my lunch." "I demand to see the manager." "Of course you do, Karen. Of course you do. But you're not from around here, are you?" Poor sod. "Look," Lyra finally raised her voice. "Look, you friggin' glorified nipple clamp. This isn't a damn charity, it's a restaurant. Now pay up or drive 150 miles back and go to the soup kitchen in the city if you're so desperate for a handout to go with your crap marriage. Money, now, or leave. I have paying customers who will pay up and not whine like a little brat. Customers I'd much rather deal with right now." Karen walked out. I praised Lyra, and I got my lunch for free. Not a huge fan of potato poppers, though, but like she said, I don't complain in a Scandinavian woman's house, let alone her restaurant. Story 6. Whopper Wednesdays. Some Burger Kings run a promotion called Whopper Wednesday, where you can get a Whopper for $1. The app advertises it every week as a free Whopper, but it's actually $1, still a great deal considering their sandwiches usually cost $5. One Wednesday, I was the front cashier when a customer came in asking for the Whopper Wednesday deal. I told him we didn't do that promotion. He insisted his app said he could get a Whopper for $1. I asked him for the code. He demanded I just give him the deal and that he shouldn't need a code. Sometimes I memorize certain codes. 8711 is $3 nuggets and fries. 8610 is a $3 double cheeseburger meal. 9410 is a 2-bacon cheeseburger meal, and so on. But this Whopper Wednesday deal was new and only once a week, so none of us had the code memorized. Plus, there was no way to access it in the system unless we tried all 4-digit combos until we found it. I tried explaining to the customer that I had no way of accessing the code on my end. I needed him to provide it from the app. The customer angrily pulled out his phone, but for some reason the app just wasn't working, just his luck. And of course, just my luck too, because obviously it was my fault. He argued with me for 10 minutes. My manager saw what was happening and knew I was pretty good at handling disputes on my own, so they only stepped in if the customer specifically demanded a manager. I've learned that if you handle the situation yourself, hold your ground, work with the customer to solve the conflict, and carry yourself a certain way, customers often won't ask for a manager. Finally, the customer slammed his phone down and backed off, asking for those 2 Whopper meals. I carried on, took his order. He seemed more pissed with every question I asked. I didn't care. I just wanted to get his order right and get him out. I then told him his total almost $20. He flipped out again. I wanted the 2 for $10, 2 small Whopper meals for $10. I took a deep breath and explained that the 2 for $10 promotion had ended a few weeks ago and was no longer in the system. I literally couldn't ring it up. He spent another 10 minutes screaming at me, the only time I was ever fully cussed out during my entire time at Burger King. He stormed out, calling me every name in the book, and even hit his head on the door on the way out. After that, I downloaded the Burger King app myself so we could look up all the coupon codes that weren't in the system, to avoid any more of these encounters. Screw that guy. Story 7. I used to work at Kohl's and have several war stories because their service policy is to always side with the customer, no matter how ridiculous their demands. For example, a guy once returned a pair of shoes that looked like they'd been used for daily runs on the beach for 2 straight years, claiming they hurt his son's foot. Management was totally fine with it. The ones that stand out most for me include a woman came up to the register and said, "Oh shoot, I forgot I had a gift card at home. Oh well, it's only a few dollars." She went through the whole transaction, then noticed on her receipt that something had rung up about 35 cents higher than it was supposed to. She made me call a manager just to void and redo the entire transaction over that. But not using the gift card because it was only a few dollars wasn't a big deal. A family once brought in a shirt without a tag, and it didn't even have an easy reference number printed on the cloth tag to look up the price. It turned out to be the last one of that shirt in the entire store, and it took forever, involving 3 different employees just to find the price. When we finally got it to ring up, it was something like $5 on clearance. They said, "Can't it be cheaper?" We've been waiting a while. Then there was the woman who tried to pay her store credit card bill with over $1,000 in gift cards. We had a special fundraising gift card that could be applied to credit card balances, but regular store gift cards couldn't. I am not sure what the exact difference was, but I assume it had to do with how the fundraising cards were sold, maybe ensuring a real cash value behind them, or simply being an incentive for the organization running the fundraiser. Anyway, as soon as I told her this, she said, "Okay, you have to call a manager because I have over $1,000 in gift cards and I need to use them to pay my credit card bill." She hadn't gotten the gift cards for face value, otherwise why wouldn't she just use that $1,000 to pay her bill directly rather than buying gift cards first? The manager told her he couldn't do anything and that she had to call corporate. I don't know what happened next, but she was on the phone for what felt like an eternity. Also, this didn't happen to me. But a coworker had a customer threaten to call the police because her Kohl's cash was taken away when she returned something she wanted to report us for stealing money from her. It's a friggin' coupon. Story 8. The final straw for me at Office Max was when my store manager told me to stop yelling at the new hire. I was calmly explaining to her how to properly rotate the candy. My store manager and customers were there. I wasn't yelling or being mean at all. But my manager kept insisting, "Stop yelling at the new hire." So I yelled back at him, threw the box I was holding on the ground, and left for the day. A few days later, he pulled me aside and said, "Sarah, you can yell at the new hires." I literally said, "You're seriously on this again?" The new hire felt like I was yelling, but again, I was calmly explaining what she was doing wrong and how to do candy rotation properly. After a few more minutes of talking, he said, "Listen, if anyone is doing something wrong, you come see me or the manager on duty, and we will handle it." I told him flat out, "Well, if you're not going to do your job, someone has to," and I walked away again. My store manager cut my hours after that. Luckily, I had already found another job that same evening, so the next day I put in my 2-week notice. At first, I wrote it on a sticky note. My manager said, "I am not going to accept this." So I went to the print center, typed up a proper resignation letter, printed it, signed it, and handed it to him. I didn't even bother paying the 50 cents or whatever it cost for the print. My manager had no choice but to accept it. I worked out my last 2 weeks as lazily as possible and started my new job with a smile, knowing I'd never have to deal with that wuss again. My store manager at Office Max was a lazy piece of crap. He spent most of the day sitting in the office, talking to his wife on his cell phone or the store phone. It drove all of us nuts to answer the phone, do our greeting, and hear, "Hey, this is the store manager's wife. Is the store manager available?" Honestly, I preferred my original manager, who literally teased me about my incontinence in front of customers. I told him to cut it out, and whenever he started, I'd say, "Now's not the time, Jay." He teased me at the registers mid-transaction and brought it up at store meetings. He teased me about it just about every single day we worked together. And even so, I still preferred Jay over the lazy wuss who replaced him. Story 9. At one point, I worked for a pest control company that offered termite protection. We used Centricon stations, about 7 inches long, that were buried in the ground. Since we needed to dig, we would contact 811 to have utility lines marked. 811 is not affiliated with our company in any way. Typically, 811 would mark the lines within a few days, and then we'd come out with an electric auger to place the stations. Sometimes, though, 811 was backed up, or there were concerns about unmarked lines, so we also had a manual auger as a backup. The options were either to have 811 mark the lines and use the electric auger, or skip the marking and use the hand auger. This was important both for our technicians' safety and to avoid damaging utility lines like water pipes or buried power cables. 811 could take several days to mark a line, but we never processed any payment until the work was done and the Centricons were installed. I got a call from a guy who had signed the contract for Centricon stations 2 days earlier. He wanted to know when we would come out to do the installation. I explained we were waiting for 811 to mark the utility lines. He immediately lost his mind, yelling about how he had paid a lot of money and we couldn't just take his money without doing the work. I tried to explain that we hadn't run his card yet and wouldn't until the work was done. He kept yelling for several more minutes, insisting the stations be placed that day. Eventually, I put him on hold and called the service center manager. He said we could come out that day using the hand auger if the customer was that insistent. Great. When I told the customer we could do the hand auger installation today, since 811's estimated arrival was 3 to 5 days, he yelled even louder, saying we would not do anything on his property until the lines were marked. "So you want us out today, but don't want us out until the lines are marked?" He yelled at me and called me an idiot. We went around in circles for several minutes while I tried to get him to realize he was asking for something impossible and explained a dozen times that I couldn't control 811. Finally, I gave up and sent him to my manager, who then got screamed at for 30 minutes over the same issue. In the end, we canceled his contract and marked his account as "Do Not Sell" due to harassment. Story 10. I work at Home Depot in order fulfillment. Recently, a bopious order came in for a Halloween product. I knew offhand that we had recently shipped all the remaining Halloween items to another nearby store, which was doing gangbusters this season. But just to be sure, I checked anyway. Our entire Halloween section had been completely cleared out to make way for Christmas. I confirmed with the supervisor for that product. The Halloween stock was gone. We were just waiting for the other store to finalize the paperwork to update the inventory system. I called the customer and explained that his product was out of stock at my store and all nearby stores, but if he was willing to make the drive, the store about 40 minutes up the freeway had the full Halloween selection. He understood, thanked me for my time, and asked for a refund. Easy, no problem. About 20 minutes later, I saw his name pop up in my orders again. Same product. I didn't even bother checking the system. I just called him directly. I explained again that he had ordered from the same store, and we still didn't have it. Our counts were off because of the pending paperwork. I apologized for the inconvenience, and again, he seemed to understand. I made sure to mention he needed to change the store selection on his end if he wanted to pick it up from the other location. Great. Moving on with my day. 30 minutes later, guess who? I called him back and introduced myself again. He immediately interrupted, yelling, "What is going to take for you to have this at your store? Your website says you have it. Why are you lying to me? Do I need to call corporate to actually get some customer service here?" It went from 0 to 100 instantly. I tried to politely explain for a third time, but he wasn't having it, just yelling over everything. While he was going off, I quietly canceled his order and refunded him. Under his screaming, I explained that my store wasn't doing personal transfers to limit cross-store contamination during COVID. Even if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be driving more than 30 miles to pick up a less than $10 item. I thanked him and hung up. I don't know if he actually called corporate, but I definitely saw his survey response and his Yelp review. Like, bruh, are you really that sore over not getting your little decoration? You've got all the time in the world to blast your valued opinion of our service, but not 60 seconds to listen and understand that it's simply not available. Story 11. I worked 2 years at the front desk of a high-end hotel, so I have plenty of stories, but this one happened during my internship before that. It was Valentine's Day, and the hotel had a special offer on its website for a romantic evening. Basically, the package included a room decorated with a bottle of champagne, rose petals on the bed, chocolates, and a voucher for an in-room dinner served with all the chic flair, servers wearing white gloves, plated courses, and so on. The offer was expensive, but with good reason. We were all trained to provide a fully romantic experience. A guest arrived with his girlfriend. The man was in quite a hurry, but slipped a few comments during check-in about how much he was looking forward to a romantic night with her, as it was also their anniversary. We, of course, congratulated them and gave them a free upgrade to an executive room instead of the standard one he had booked. The guest came back less than 5 minutes later, yelling at the top of his lungs, claiming we had ruined his weekend and calling us crooks. He approached me and started lecturing me on how the first impression is the most important thing, insisting his room was only standard, which meant no rose petals, no champagne. Intrigued and dreading that I might have made a mistake, I checked the booking. My internship director was very strict, and the success of my year depended on his notes. I double-checked the booking. It was a standard room, not the special offer, so I kindly explained to the guest that I had actually upgraded him, so he was getting a better room than what he'd booked. He started yelling that I was wrong, insisting the booking was for the special package. I double-checked with him again and offered to match the elements of the package by having them brought to his room, almost matching the price difference between the standard room and the package. He still wasn't satisfied and insisted he had booked the special package, accusing us of trying to screw him out of his booking. Curious, I opened the website to check how he had booked it. He then pointed to the standard room option just below the Valentine's Day offer. I confirmed that, yes, it was indeed the standard booking. His answer nearly made me burst out laughing. Yeah, of course I took the cheapest. Doesn't mean you can treat me differently than people with more money. Story 12. I work in a public library. Late fees are 25 cents per day per item with a maximum of $10 or the cost of the item, whichever is lower. So if you had two books overdue by a month and one cost $20 while the other was $4.99, your total fines would be $14.99. I can tell you how many people have yelled at me for owing just 25 cents for being a day late. The worst, though, was this one lady who was always causing trouble. We're a county library with over 30 branches. If one branch doesn't have the item you want but another does, you can put it on hold and have it transferred. She would demand that we drop everything and immediately go through the newly arrived shipment to see if her hold was in yet. Then she'd get angry when we told her it would take at least an hour, if not more. Everything was a demand with her. Well, we were closed for a holiday, and it just so happened she had a book due the day before. The rule is that if you return a book to the book drop, which is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and even has a drive-up option, any time before opening, it counts as returned on the last day we were open. She came in that afternoon and completely lost it because she was 2 days late and owed 50 cents. She insisted that since we were closed one day, she should only owe 25 cents. She ranted and raved, and all I did was stand there and finally say, "Ma'am, that's why we have a book drop." She grumbled, but paid her 50 cents. What she and many others who yell at me over a quarter don't understand is that with fines that low, I have the authority to waive them. Honestly, if someone is polite and kind, and it's only 25 cents, I often waive the fine without even telling them they owe anything. Currently, we're not charging any fines due to COVID, since we quarantine items for 4 days before checking them in. Only damaged or lost items incur charges. Despite this being announced repeatedly, my coworkers and I have been yelled at multiple times by patrons demanding that we bypass quarantine, find their single book, and check it in immediately so they won't get late fees. Story 13. As much as I could go on about the many arguments with customers in the auto parts industry, 3 things really stand out. 1. Trying to explain why certain parts aren't listed for their vehicle for various reasons. And of course, the classic, "well, I can buy it online cheaper" argument.
Okay.
A scammer trying the old "my parents, grandparents, friend, whoever bought a jack and I want to return or warranty it" trick. The manager took the call and patiently went through the whole spiel, arguing with the woman that we couldn't process the return because 1. She didn't have a receipt, no surprise there. 2. We don't store customer information, so there was no record of purchase, again no receipt. 3. We cannot make transactions over the phone unless you have an account. 4. We cannot do a return or warranty on a part that isn't physically here. The lady eventually got frustrated and said, "Well, that's not good customer service." The manager replied, "No, it isn't. That's company policy." She hung up. And then there's this one that just takes the cake. Similar to the story above, a customer kept arguing about getting his money back for a warranty on a part he refused to return for the warranty process. Long story short, he needed CV axles for his car. We no longer listed them because they were discontinued, so we ordered remanufactured ones for him, both with core deposits. He returned one of the cores but insisted the other one needed to be warrantied for some reason I can't remember. We told him, "Okay, bring us the axle and we'll warranty it and refund your money." He refused. His logic was something like, "I already gave you one, why would I give you the other? Can't you just refund me for it?" We spent weeks, yes, weeks, going back and forth. He kept leaving and coming back, arguing about it. We explained to him, plain and simple, "We cannot refund you for a warranty on a part we don't have because you refuse to give it to us." Story 14. One Black Friday, I was working on the register at Kohl's with a really long line of customers carrying full baskets. A lady came up and asked if she could cut the line because she only wanted to buy a gift card. I understood why she asked, but I didn't think it was fair to everyone else in line. Sure, some people had full carts, but many had just a few items. I told her no, everyone had to wait their turn. She got kind of pissed off, complained that it was total crap, and then walked to the back of the line. I kept going, and a few customers I rang up along the way validated me, saying I was right, and the gift card lady was wrong. About 15 minutes after the incident, and out of the 12 cashiers we had, she ended up at my register. She walked up, kind of threw the gift card at me, and said, "Oh great, I am stuck with you." I replied, "Feelings mutual." She frowned. "Excuse me?" I shrugged. "What?" She exclaimed, "Are you freaking kidding me? That is so rude." I laughed lightly. "I thought you were joking." "Honestly, I thought I'd gotten through to her earlier." Lol. She got mad and launched into the usual Karen routine, demanding to see the manager and all that. My manager came over and started apologizing for my extremely abusive behavior. The lady snapped, "I want an apology from her." So, with literally half the store watching, I leaned in and said firmly, "No, I am not apologizing to you." By this point, I was pretty pissed and dropped the customer-friendly act, saying it with some pizzazz. "Oh great, go screw off," she shot back angrily and walked away. I called after her, "Thanks, you too." After she left, my manager and a few customers apologized to me, saying I shouldn't have had to deal with that. What's funny is, she never ended up buying the gift card, so what the heck, lady? Story 15. I worked for an ISP as a lead tech. One day, a woman from a church called in wanting a static IP. We charged $10 to issue one and $10 to change it. She got her IP info emailed to her and hung up. She called back within minutes, fuming. Apparently, her static IP had 3 sixes in it, and she couldn't have that. The agent told her, "For $10, I can change it again, but it's random and I can guarantee it won't have 3 sixes." She accepted. Sure enough, the new IP had 3 sixes again. The woman called back, screaming at the next poor agent, and refused to hang up until she got an IP without 3 sixes. By the time she got to me, she'd tried 15 times to get an IP without 3 sixes. She demanded a refund and that someone work on getting her one without them. I told her, "I will try as often as you want, but you'll be charged $10 each time." After roughly 10 to 15 more attempts, we finally got her an IP without 3 sixes. By then, she had racked up about $500 in IP switching charges. She had called in repeatedly that day and spoken to many people. She demanded I refund the charges or post a credit to her account. I refused, reminding her that at the start of the call she said, "Fine," when I told her about the fees. She demanded to speak to my supervisor. And I said, "Funny thing, I am my supervisor. I created this team and I am the manager of it." She then demanded to speak to the person who signs your paycheck. I replied, "Ma'am, the accounting lady isn't going to be helpful at all with this issue. She doesn't know a thing about tech." Next, she wanted my CEO's email, so I gave it to her. Those emails actually come straight to me since the CEO doesn't have time to read them. I called her back. She screamed at me, hung up, and I never heard from her again. Still, I noted on her account that if she called about the IP or requested credits or refunds to transfer her directly to me, in the end, she paid the bill and never called back again during the 5 years she had service. Story 16. Okay, so I figured out a way to diffuse these kinds of moronic interactions with nearly 90% success. You act like you completely understand their idiotic confusion. Pretend you almost did the same thing once. Then, just in time, you learned one strange fact and drop the explanation. Watch this. A customer walks up. They're either empty-handed or holding just a bare light bulb on a base. They say nothing else but, "My salt lamp disappeared." Yes, that's exactly how it'll be phrased. You respond with genuine concern, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" Make your face show that this is the most important thing in the world. They reply, "I put it in the dishwasher because it was dusty and it disappeared." This information usually only comes out after a couple minutes of confusing and roundabout explanation attempts. Now you lean in, lower your voice, get a bit conspiratorial. "Oh no, you know what, I almost did the same thing. You know how it gets dusty? I took it off the stand to wash it and was this close to putting it in the sink. But then I thought, wait a minute. I got online and it turns out everyone else had the same thing happen. It's because they don't use any sealant, and since it's made of real salt, it dissolves. Isn't that ridiculous?" Then shake your head and tisk-tisk at how unfair and dumb that is of the Himalayan Salt Lamp Company. This method takes away their embarrassment, the kind they usually hide behind anger. Once that's gone, you're free to fix the problem with a refund or whatever's appropriate. Most companies want to please customers, no matter how friggin' wrong they are. Edit. This trick also works great for enforcing policies the customer hates. You say, "I am sorry, but we can only sell $1,000 worth of gift cards per day to a single customer." They snap back, "That's ridiculous." You respond enthusiastically, "I know, right?" Now they feel validated in their outrage. Plus, they believe you wouldn't be enforcing the policy if you had any other choice. Usually, after that, they don't even try to find a loophole. Story 17. I have an email saved that I like to read from time to time because it always makes me laugh. This person worked for a company that travels around the country and even worldwide to trade conventions to sell their products. They had sent their product displays to our local convention center but didn't check if the label was correctly placed on the box. It fell off. I got a call about it, and after searching in our warehouse, I found the box, so I went out of my way to fix the problem. I know how time-sensitive and urgent these things can be, and maybe they weren't even in the same city or country anymore, so I took the call seriously. The lady on the phone was frantic, and I get it, but she said she couldn't talk over the phone because she was too busy, so she asked me to email her instead. She explained that she was leaving our city and landing in another city tomorrow, and she wanted her shipment forwarded there. I did exactly as she asked and had the shipment forwarded to the new city. But then she freaked out in an email because she was only temporarily staying there and was actually moving to another city 500 kilometers north. So now she wanted her stuff sent there instead. No problem. I contacted that station, had them fix it, and reroute the shipment again. It arrived, but guess what? She had already moved on to yet another city, this time 2,000 kilometers away on the other coast. That night, she emailed me 5 times, even though I'd clearly told her my work hours and when I'd be at my desk. At 3 a.m. my time, she complained in an email that I was ignoring her. Throughout the whole chain, I was very clear about what I was doing and kept asking questions to help. But she threw me under the bus in the email thread, copying everyone in her company. I finally got her shipment sorted and delivered, but she tried to get me in trouble with my higher-ups and demanded my manager follow up because I was so unprofessional. The best part, a senior executive from her company replied, basically praising me for trying to help, even if she didn't see it that way. She still works there somehow. Story 18. 17 years ago, when I was pregnant with my son, I worked as a cashier at a fast food joint in the mall's food court. It was about 10 days before Christmas. I was 6 months along and completely drained. My soon-to-be son was practicing Olympic gymnastics inside my belly, using my bladder like a stress ball. On top of that, my boss was a total pickle. No sympathy, no accommodations. I was clocking over 40 hours a week on my feet with 0 breaks or adjustments for being pregnant. By that point, with the holiday chaos closing in, I was utterly exhausted and completely done with anything even remotely festive or Christmassy. One of the managers from a fancy women's clothing boutique in the mall came up to my counter and ordered something. I honestly don't even remember what. I was trying hard to be cheerful, but it was tough. I was just so tired. When her order came out, I handed it to her and she left. About 10 minutes later, the shift manager on duty came over. Thank goodness it was Friday and the store owner, the GM, wasn't around. He was at the temple or whatever Muslims call their place of worship. I was pretty sure if he'd been there, he would have scolded me badly, maybe even called me into the office. The shift manager said, "So-and-so from such-and-such store just complained that you didn't have enough Christmas cheer." I looked at him and said, "Really? Because I am exhausted. I am beyond exhausted. Even my exhaustion has exhaustion at this point." The shift manager shrugged and said, Yeah, I got it, whatever." He offered me a choice, take a 15-minute break to compose myself, whatever the hell that meant, or just go home. Without hesitation, I grabbed my purse, clocked out, and happily took myself downstairs to Godiva. I bought 2 peppermint truffles, then strolled over to the Starbucks kiosk for a small hot chocolate. Finding a nearby couch, I sat down, savoring my treats. After that little indulgence, I went home, put my feet up, and finally took the nap I desperately needed. Story 19. I used to work at a buffet chain where customers paid before sitting down. One day, a group of 2 seniors and 2 adults came in. Seniors had a slightly cheaper meal. I rang up all 4 on one ticket. One of the adults immediately said, "That's wrong. It should be 1 senior and 1 adult per ticket." He hadn't mentioned that before, but okay. I restarted the transaction. No one had paid yet. I split it so 1 senior and 1 adult were on each ticket. They paid and sat down. A few minutes later, the same guy, clearly annoyed, came back and said, "No, you got the tickets wrong." I was confused and thought maybe he meant the seniors should be on one ticket and the adults on the other. I asked my manager for permission to refund the tickets since we couldn't do it without approval. He said, "Okay." So I refunded them and re-ringed the order. 2 seniors on one ticket, 2 adults on the other. I read both tickets out loud before finalizing, and the guy agreed. He left, and I thought that was the end of it. But nope, he came back again, red in the face, yelling and calling me incompetent. At $9 an hour, I thought, I am not getting paid enough to be called an idiot. I called my manager over. As soon as the manager showed up, the guy calmed down immediately. I stepped back, didn't feel like listening to his complaining again. Later, I asked my manager what the problem was. He said, "You had it right the first time, 1 adult and 1 senior per ticket." The guy was just a moron, probably trying to get a free meal. Story 20. I loved delivering pizzas back in the day, but God almighty, some customers were absolute D-heads. One time, a lady called the store to complain her pizza was cold and demanded a new one. Her house was maybe half a mile from the store. I had taken her pizza first on my run, and it was the last one out. When I delivered it, it had been maybe 5 minutes out of the oven, probably still the temperature of molten lava. My manager told me to take her a new one, but to get the old one back. I knocked on her door and said, "Ma'am, I need to take the first pizza back to the store." She looked at me and said, "I can give you this one unless you give me the other one." I replied, "I need the old pizza before I can give you a new one." She said, "We threw it out. It's in the trash." I said, "Show me." She snapped, "I am not letting you look in our trash." I answered, "Then I am not giving you this pizza." She threatened, "I am calling your manager." I shrugged, "Go ahead, but I have other pizzas to deliver." I left and did my thing. Later, my manager told me she was getting a refund and told me to take the new pizza back to her after I finished delivering to other customers. I also told her she was now on the banned customer list. She called the store again and complained. This time, it was because I didn't refund her $2 tip. My manager sighed and said, "Just give her back the $2. He even offered, "I will give you $2 out of my own pocket if it'll just make her go away." So, I went to the register and bought 4 rolls of pennies. Then I unwrapped them, all of them. When I pulled up to her house, she was already standing on the porch, one hand on her hip, the other stretched out like she was some queen expecting tribute. She said flatly, "Where's my $2? Without a word, I dropped 200 pennies into her hand. Her smug expression evaporated. Her hand, of course, was too small to hold that many coins. The pennies spilled everywhere, bounced off the steps, rolled into the grass, under the porch. Total chaos. I just turned around, got back in my car, and returned to the store. Back at work, I told my manager what I'd done. He looked like he wanted to be mad. Probably thought he should be, but then he just burst out laughing. "You know what?" he said, still chuckling. "Screw it. She's on the banned customer list." Story 21. I was a shift supervisor. A lady came into the store with a dog, one of those fashion accessory types with a diamond-studded collar, definitely not a service animal. I approached her and said, "Ma'am, I am sorry, but dogs aren't allowed in the store unless they are service animals." She scoffed. "This is a service animal." I raised an eyebrow. "A service animal?" "Yes," she snapped. "And besides, I've been bringing him in for years. I've been coming here since before you were even born." This was my first time seeing her. I'd been working there full-time for a year. And I knew for a fact the store had only been around for maybe 8 years. Still, I let that go. I pointed to the sign by the door. Store policy: no dogs unless they service animals. She waved her hand like she was swatting away a fly. That's a stupid policy. People always make exceptions for me. There's no reason I shouldn't bring my dog. Meanwhile, I was already wheezing, sniffling, and breaking out in hives. I am not trying to make this personal, I said, pulling out my inhaler. It's about hygiene. Some people have severe dog allergies. She rolled her eyes. I added, and I am one of them. I am literally allergic to your dog. She told me it was impossible to be allergic unless I touched them. She said, literally, I was in the middle of an allergy attack. She didn't care. Instead, she threatened to call head office and have me fired. I said, okay, go right ahead. I wrote my name on a post-it note, along with my manager's name, the regional manager's name and number, and the head office's number. I handed it to her and wished her luck. She was shocked and furious. She stormed out. I went to the back and took some antihistamines. I wasn't worried. I hated that job anyway. My coworker saw the whole thing. I told my manager when she came in. No one ever heard from that lady again. She never came back despite insisting she was a regular. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.